All right. Thank you for joining us. So we appreciate you being patient while we're getting a few things ironed out here. The challenges of live streaming are always never ending. It's almost like being on stage again, giving live demos and just waiting for that hammer to hit because you know something is not going to work. But I think we're up and running. We're good. We seem to be live across all our platforms. As a reminder for Let's Talk Cloud, we go live on LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as on Twitter. So please feel free to join the discussion there. We've got a great team in the background monitoring the comments to bring them up so that myself and our guests can interact with you and bring your commentary and answer your questions. So please don't be shy commenting there. And on that note, my name's Mark Notakoven. I'm the VP of Cloud Research at Trend Micro, but you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to yet another fantastic guest. This week we are honored to have Tanya Janka join us. She is better known as She Hacks Purple. She is the founder, security trainer, CEO, amazing person, wizard, anything you can throw that is a positive adjective, that describes Tanya in a nutshell. I'm going to flip over. Give me 2 seconds because this is first time we've been Zooming for one of these streams.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Tanya Janka. I am a giant nerd that is obsessed with the security of software. And a lot of software lives in the cloud. So then I became obsessed with cloud security. And I teach and train and coach at my own little startup that I started this year called shehackspurple.dev. And yeah, basically I just really obsessed with helping people make create more secure software across the planet. Mhm. Yes. Okay.
There we go. I think we're good now. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So just double checking. Again, live streaming, you got to love it. And, you know,
Yes.
I'm sure you've experienced some challenges in the live demos, but now you're training on your own. Do you want to give a quick plug and we'll add the link to your stuff in the show notes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just so what have you spun up at shehacks.purple.dev?
Okay. So we only started in February, so we're going pretty quick. So right now we have a membership club where it's $7 and you get regular content from me. And the content is about, for instance, like a new vulnerability that's happening quite a lot and how to secure your systems, or how to learn enough to get a job in InfoSec, or just basically once or twice a week I'm having live streams and people ask questions, and then it turns out lots of people want to know the answer to that, and all of those become blog posts. But quite soon, at the end of this month, in fact, I'm going to be giving my first 2 courses live virtually. And then those courses are going to become courses you can do at home from my site. So the virtual version of the OWASP Global AppSec Conference, so they're calling it AppSec Days, I will be giving an introduction of how to build an application security program. So we're going to set goals. We're going to list out activities to get you to those goals. We're going to talk about how to scale your team so that you can get to those goals, exact training and learning that you need to do so you can kick the crap out of those goals. And basically, like, we spend the whole day planning out your AppSec program and teaching you about AppSec the whole way through. I'm so excited. And then I'm also going to be teaching for the DEF CON chapter in Toronto.
Okay.
I was supposed to show up there in person, and that's going to be this big surprise. But now clearly that can't happen. So I'm going to be giving a hack all the things with GitHub Actions, like 4 hours. We're going to build a pipeline. And then I have this really insecure, awful .NET app that I've made, and we're going to find secrets in it, and then we're going to find vulnerable dependencies, and then we're going to fix them because I'm mean and I make people fix problems. And then we're going to do all that, and then we're going to publish to Azure and be like, look at our crappy app. Yes. So we're just going to automate lots of security tests. And they're like, how many tests do you have? I'm like, how much time do we have? Because I literally have enough to do days and days, but we're going to try to fit it into like 2-hour slots of.
Nice. I like it. And
And
you know,
that's
I got to say,
that will become a course on the site too, but I'm just going to keep building upon it. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to automate all the things.
It's great. And I find those are almost the most fun things to write when you're purposefully trying to make them bad, right? When you're
Yeah.
purposely trying to figure out how to make this insecure, it is so much fun because it's such a contrast to what we normally try to do. And that's fantastic. And I think we're going to touch on a few more things as we go on in this conversation of what you're up to online, because it's awesome that we've been able, as a community, to shift a lot of the stuff that was in person into virtual events for people to be participating in. But one of the things I know, having watched your talks over the last few years and seen all the fantastic content you're putting in, you mentioned the word modern a lot with respect to security. Can you maybe kick us off by telling us what does modern application security mean to you?
Okay, it means two things to me. So one is that a lot of developers and dev shops and operations folks have moved towards DevOps, and they're not doing waterfalls, and they're not doing Agile. And Agile seems to be a moving target as to its definition. So a lot of shops are actually doing DevOps, and then some of them are doing kind of part way where they're like, we have a pipeline, but we don't do any of the other things. So modern application security is the security team actually adjusting themselves so they actually also do DevOps. So none of this, we're just going to keep trying to do the old security model and just break all your DevOps processes and like manually stop your pipeline partway through because we feel we need 3 weeks for a code review. It's like, that's not happening anymore. I'm sorry. Like, that's really cute. Go home. Go home. You're drunk. But the other thing with modern apps is that the way apps are being built is totally different now. Like when I started, you would have end-tier architecture. And end-tier meant you had a database and it was on one server, and then you had your web server and your web app was there, and then that was the end. And now you have like microservices, you have containers that might be orchestrated, and you have one-page web apps where traditional security tools, they just do nothing. They just spit out nothing.
Yeah.
And so we need to adjust the way that we are doing security if we are going to secure modern applications. And that means looking at things, basically like some of the old things still apply, like you still always, no matter what you're doing, need to do awesome input validation. If every single person on the planet could just learn that, we would be off to the races. Yes, exactly. Follow your hardening guides, etc. So like all the normal things, but then there's new things. Like if you're going to have lots of APIs, then you should have a gateway. You should have a service mesh. You should, oh my gosh, there's just so many things. Like the list just goes on. And I think that if we're going to do modern apps, like we need to make sure that we are securing them properly, like the way that they need to be secured. It's different. Like for APIs, for instance, like you want to throttle them, right? Like no person tries to log in 500 times. That a human is not doing that, right? So like as more bots happen, we need to harden our apps against those. Anyway, I'll talk all day. So that's what it means to me, those two things. Yeah.
It's fine. I mean, that's, that's the whole point of this, is to get, your expertise out here. And I love, that explaining, not just the security needs to change, but the way we built applications changes, which actually leads into one of my favorite of your talks. You do a great talk called Pushing Left Like a Boss. Right. I love it. It's not just pushing left. No, that's fine. You got to do it like a boss. Right. And one of those things that you talk about, one of the key pillars in that talk, and you kind of, you hinted at it here, is really about getting security thinking earlier in that development process. Why is that such a key to success?
So if you look at the system development lifecycle, the further left you push, the earlier you are. We both know this. But the further left you push, so the earlier you are in the system development lifecycle, the cheaper it is. So if I want to add a new bathroom to my house, if I want to do it now, like when I live in the apartment, that's going to cost a fortune. And they're going to have to sacrifice another room. They're going to have to figure out how to run the water, etc. But if we were building this house, which like is a few, 50 or 60 years ago, way before I was born, That was no digs. There's no
I
digs
was
there.
say,
That was not.
I'm getting more and more gray in my beard here, Tanya. As this conversation goes, by the end of it, I'm just going to be tiny in the corner. But I get you. I know where you're going with that.
But if you want to add a bathroom then and you're designing it out, that's easy. It's totally easy, right? And in the middle, when you're building it, you can still do it because everything, the walls are open, you're doing the water still. It's more expensive, but still costly, right? But now adding a bathroom, like, it's not possible. Or it is, but I mean, do I want to lose my office where I do all these cute recordings? No. And so
Well,
I'll deal with the number of bathrooms that I have.
yeah, and I mean, I think the key there is like the implication there is that it changes the value proposition, right? When you go, yeah, I really want that extra washroom, but if it's going to take ripping the house apart and going to cost 30x what it normally would have when I was designing this place, it's not as I can live without it, right? Like I can go without that, and it's
Exactly.
interesting.
And when we find a security bug, so like a vulnerability or even worse, a design flaw, that is so expensive to fix later. And when I have this chart from the Ponemon Institute of how much it costs. So there's a bunch of different places online and they all say a different amount. But after it's in production, the cost is quite a bit higher. I would say almost 100 times higher. However, if there's an incident, so if I notice the vulnerability or flaw in production, or one of my clients notices and reports it to me, that's fine. But if, Bad Guys Incorporated finds it, that could be an exponential, like just add squared, cubed, etc. onto that number that you originally had, because it can be out of this world, the cost of an incident. Like you don't even know, and also it could damage your reputation, etc. Right. And then all those resources that are completely rediverted from all the other work you were doing. Yeah. So that's why we need to start security earlier, because of money and because of quality, because
I think that's a key word. I love that you said quality, because I think that's a language that development teams and businesses, development teams for sure, businesses getting there when it comes to IT, that's something they understand. So relating that security in as treating it the same impacts as quality failures, makes it easier to bridge that gap. But the bathroom analogy is perfect too, right? Because there's everybody's sitting in their house, especially now, going like, I would have loved to take that wall down. But you look at the money and you go, yeah, I'm not going to spend that much to do that. Whereas, when we were building it or when you were looking at the place, you would have selected something different that met your requirements if you knew you're going to be stuck here 24/7 for the next few months.
Yes.
So that's great.
So correct.
And so that talk, just for the audience, everybody tuning in, and we've got people from around the world, which is great. We put up the show notes, and everything I'm referencing here of Tanya's work is in the show notes, so you can see the recording of Pushing Left Like a Boss there, and the team will put the link to show descriptions in the chats on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, so you guys don't have to frantically Google stuff in the background. We made it easy and pulled stuff together, and I'll add whatever comes up. But one of the things also, Tanya, is you're super, super active with OWASP. Globally, and locally, wherever you end up being, so now moving out into the West Coast, being there. Where do you think, having been in OWASP for quite a long time and seen a huge change over the last few years, where do you think OWASP has had the most success?
The most success? Well, the most famous thing we're known for is the OWASP Top 10. And I feel we've had quite a bit of success with that, because it has brought awareness to the fact that security is a problem.
Yeah.
And for instance, in the most recent version, cross-site request forgery was taken off the top 10 because we brought so much attention to it that several of the major frameworks just wrote it into the framework. Like .NET wrote it in, it just automatically passes the token for you. And developers, like all the way left, like that is a dream come true, right? So I do believe we've really helped bring attention to it. And I do believe we've helped a lot of people solve a lot of problems, like the cheat sheet series, for instance, which is my favorite project, including of my project. And it's the answers to everything. So if you want to test cross-site scripting, you just like look up the cross-site scripting, and then they actually have a filter evasion cheat sheet So you could do the best testing ever.
Perfect.
And it's just so cool, right? I also think that the community building has been really beautiful. So we, in the past year, have gone from 250 to over 300 chapters. I think that has a lot to do with our new executive director,
Mm-hmm.
who kind of decided to emphasize the O in OWASP, which stands for open.
Yep.
So that's really good. The community was a bit divided before. We didn't have an executive director for a really long time. And then we had one for a while, but was at friction with the community for quite a bit. So that person left. And now we have someone where everyone, they're kind of click, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, and it
Um,
makes a huge difference, especially when it's volunteer driven, right? You need that
mhm.
vibe and that there. You mentioned your project. Do you want to give us a little rundown of what your OWASP project is?
So my friend Nicole Becker and I decided we would start a project called DevSlop, Sloppy DevOps, because we wanted to know, because back then we're both penetration testers and we wanted to know, how do you do penetration testing on modern apps? How do you do penetration testing most effectively in a DevOps environment and not break all the things and still be someone they want to hire back after? And so she made this wildly insecure app with some microservices, and we started giving workshops. Then I created, so we decided the project would have multiple modules,
Mm-hmm.
so the project could just never end. So I made this giant pipeline with like 9 tools in it. And then I would demonstrate it at places and like make videos of me actually building things live and then
Mm-hmm.
smashing things and then adding new tools. And then we had the DevSlop show, which is now, I mean, twice a month right now on
Mm-hmm.
Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 10 a.m. my time, Pacific. And we have guests on and just interview them and ask them stuff. So last week we had Terry Radical on, and she's a cloud pen tester. And we're just like, how do you smash all the things? And she's like, yeah.
Yep.
Um, and so there's 4 of us that are part of the project. So there's Franziska, who's a WAF expert. So she
Mm-hmm.
actually wrote a bunch of the core rule set for mod security.
Okay.
And so she's created 4 different pipelines now that have a WAF in it, and then your app, and then a bunch of scanners attacking the WAF and tuning it automatically in your pipeline so that you could tune your WAF and
Nice.
release it. It's so cool, right? So we just
Yeah.
build weird shit. That's what we do. And then Nancy is one of the project leaders, and she's sort of like the overarching organizer, making sure that we actually get shit done. She's very politely, she's like, come on, cats.
Yep.
She
Yeah,
nerds
well,
all
because
about it.
the problem is it's easy to go down the rabbit hole, right? Especially when you're doing something super cool. So, like that WAF tuning, the auto tuning with scanners, you could spend months on that just going because you'd be
Right,
like, ooh, and I could do this, and I could do that, and I could do this, and then I
right.
could, automatically vulnerability scan based on that result back here and push this, and you just go nuts, right? Which is a good thing, but you need to strike a balance at some point. So, having somebody, crack the whip to herd the cats is important.
She is so important. Oh my gosh. It was a mess before her.
Very cool. So I want to ask something maybe a little more controversial or a little pushbacky on this. So you mentioned the OWASP top 10. I think everyone pretty much knows the top 10. They've been going over a decade now with 3 major revisions. What I find interesting is that over those 3 big revisions over the 10 years, there wasn't a huge amount of change. So there was stuff up and down, and kind of categories got merged together. There wasn't like massive, like, hey, we wiped this one off. Like injection was injection, then SQL injection, then it's back to injection, but it's still the same principle. Do you think that's mainly because well, let me phrase this in a more sort of Jerry Springer kind of way. Is that because we
Okay.
failed at AppSec, or is that just because of the nature of things are getting more complicated? There's more people coming. There's more cyber criminals. There's more of everything. So the progress we make of pushing that stuff left into the frameworks around different types of attacks, new stuff pops up because things are more complicated than ever. What's your opinion on that lack of change around the top 10?
So there's 2 things. One is that we're still having a lot of problems and we're still finding a lot of the same problems over and over. And we are, as an industry, in my opinion, not winning. Like, we're not winning yet. We're working on it. But right now, we're not winning, in my opinion. But the second thing is that it's not a data driven list. It's supposed to be. In the most recent one, they had some data, but previously just one company gave them data. And then it was just the people on the list who used their personal or their professional experiences to form the list. So the first list was just written with like some guys in a bottle of wine. And they're like, what do you see all the time? What's the worst shit? And then they made a list of what they wish every developer would know, and the things they just keep finding over and over and over that they know are very damaging. Like, they're experts. I think they have almost 20 years experience in AppSec. So they like basically started the existence of our industry. So who knows better than them? But most companies won't give any data. Like, when they do the data call, no one gives any data. So how are they supposed to have an accurate list? And the people who give data, guess who they are? The ones that build the scanners. And lo and behold, they only find the shit that their scanners find.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Which is, I mean, and it's not them trying to be biased, but it's just, you know, this is the data they have and it's incomplete. And I get it. And that's part of the challenge is, and we see that constantly with breaches and cybercrime in general, is that companies don't want to, which is why, they don't want to report, which is why it's interesting in Canada, for us at least, there's far more stringent mandatory reporting. So it'll be interesting at the end of this year to see the first official government stats of every breach that people know about above a certain point. We'll actually have some reasonable data, not perfect, but I get it. That is a constant challenge to make decisions based on no data, right? It's I'll give myself a plug here because it leads to a plug for you. Is that tomorrow, as part of all the talks done online, the big virtual conference that Sneak is pushing and coordinating and wrangling us all into. So I'm giving a talk on risk decisions, and that's one of the biggest points is, like, we're making decisions based on no data whatsoever. Most of the risk assessments are either high, medium, or low, which is like and then they have fake math in the assessments, which I love, like high times medium equals bad. And you're like, okay, that's like, that doesn't mean anything. But at that conference, and this leads in to the next thing I wanted to ask you. Part of the conference tomorrow, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, so 5:45 Pacific, I think, is your time slot on the 15th, so Wednesday the 15th. You're giving a talk, Purple is the New Black, Modern Approaches for Application Security. Yes. Why purple, besides the fact that it's your absolute favorite color?
So when I started doing security, I started as a pen tester, and pen testers are attackers. They're offensive security, and they are considered red team. And I was briefly considering moving to the red team for Canada, but then I got an AppSec offer, and I thought about it, and it turns out I love AppSec more than I love breaking things, which was a hard choice. That's a surprisingly hard choice. Like the super, super, super prestigious, I'm a badass job, or the I'm going to do the thing that I love and makes my heart pitter patter job. Mm-hmm. So I took the AppSec job, and you do a lot of defending in AppSec, and defending is blue team. And so people were saying, oh, well, you're our pen tester, but you're also our AppSec person, and you're also our incident responder. And like, yes, I am a whole team. But they're like, oh, you do blue team and you do red team. They're like, I guess you're the purple team. And it just kind of stuck. And so everyone kept saying like, oh yeah, she does the purple team stuff because she'll do both for us. Mm-hmm. And that became my shtick. And when I went to make my Twitter handle, because I only got Twitter, I guess, not quite 3 years ago. Okay. And I had gone to a conference, and WannaCry had broken out at the conference. So like on stage, someone got an email and then read it to us. And we all freaked out and all went to respond to incidents. But they were like, you should get Twitter so you know what's going on. And I was going to put She Hacks Computers because my email used to be like, she plays guitar. And I was like, oh, she hacks computers. That's what she does, right? But that was too long. It was one character too long. So I was like, forget it. I'll just put purple because that's shorter. Who knew how important that would become as time went on, right?
Exactly.
And it just like built. And then now my company is named that last minute decision.
Hey, and it's working for you. But I like the fact that combining the two colors makes sense. And one of the things, so not to give away the talk because you're obviously giving it tomorrow and it's available on demand, I think, on your YouTube channel as well. But
Yeah.
one of the things you talk about in that talk, and for the audience, this is in like the first 30 seconds, so there's no spoilers here.
Yeah.
Is you're talking about empathy and soft skills. Do you want to give us a little bit of your perspective on that? Because you think, okay, defending and attacking, I'm just talking technology here. I'm, man in hoodie with fingerless gloves in a basement hacking things, and people running around insane in a corporate office defending things. Where's empathy come in and communication come in on that side?
I feel like in tech, we have given a lot of excuses to people with very few social skills and people who act with arrogance or rudely or insensitively. We're like, oh, boys will be boys, including women that act like that. And we're just like, oh, like tech people don't really have social skills. But the ones that rise to the top, those are always the one with social skills. Not necessarily like the most charming person you'll meet, but a person that knows how to communicate clearly. Like, no, I really need you to come to this meeting with me because we need your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Or I appreciate that you want to do that. That's against policy. Can we brainstorm a way together so you can get the thing done you need doing? But I can't have you run off and roll your own encryption or whatever the thing is that you were going to do
Yeah.
that is not acceptable to policy. Like, do you want me to explain why and the risks? Because I'll tell you. But we have a lot of people that aren't very good at communicating. And soft skills are about communicating and also about professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
Since I've switched to software development to InfoSec, people are going to get upset, but I have had so many instances of wildly unprofessional things that I've never had in software. Like,
Yep.
just especially working with other pen testers, like the ridiculousness. Like, if you would watch a movie of people like gossiping and saying bad things about each other, like that would be like maybe a quarter of the pen testers that I'd worked with, where like at first I was cute and I wasn't a threat, but then I won a contract instead of someone else. And then it's like, let's go get her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, maybe I got it because they want a softer, like, not like less testing, but just like a softer
Oh.
approach, if that makes sense. So I'll
Maybe they
go to a
want someone
software.
who can communicate effectively the problems and
Yes.
challenges as opposed to slapping a shoddily written report on the table and saying, here's your
Yes.
problems, go fix it.
Yeah. So I worked on this team of pen testers, and I remember like there was a client and they'd sent like this guy, and then they sent me. Or no, they'd sent me and then they sent the guy, and he was like, well, Tanya missed this thing. And they're like, no, like we changed code since she got here. So it's probably there. And he was like, she doesn't know what she's doing. So she should be just, and he's like telling the client this. And I was like, whoa, this is a discussion we should have together.
Mm-hmm.
So then he kept insisting that he would go back. But then he was away, so they sent me. And, I would say like, hey, I think I found something. Can we go over it and like look at your code together and whatever? And so then the client just like called the boss and was like, we never want to see that guy again. He's
Good.
so rude. He's rude to
Yeah.
her. He's rude to us. He's such a jackass. And like, she found all the things.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, if they're just like, we don't know what he's talking about. Like, he was saying, I found a thing, but then he refused to give any proof, but just kept saying that I didn't find a thing. And he's like, I don't have time to write a bullshit report about this. And
That's
we're
the
like,
whole
but
point.
that's what we pay you for. That's what we pay you for is the report. He's like, why don't you just not write shitty code? He said that to our client. Don't write shitty code. I'm just like, I'm in the conference call and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like, guess what? That guy doesn't work there anymore. And I guess theoretically I don't either because I started my own company, but not because of that.
Yeah. But it's interesting. So I mean, this tying back to the empathy, and the soft side and sort of the, and I hate that term soft side, but it's it's the common reference. But communication skills, and
Yeah.
social skills. I was talking to Patrick Dubois last week. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, Patrick, right? So DevOps handbook author, and very much coming at security over the last few months from the development side as well. And so he doesn't have the personal stories that you do, having worked in security for a while, but he had echoed very much the same thing. And it's something as a security person I've seen forever, in firsthand, is that the reputation, rightly or not, and sadly more rightly than not, is that security's grumpy, hard to work with, obstinate, arrogant. We don't have a great reputation as a profession. And I think that's something that we need to work on. But the good news is people like yourself are proving that you can have the deep chops and that, the badass skill set, and be able to speak English and be compassionate and be empathetic and realize that nobody set out to write crappy code today. They made a mistake and we can fix that. And
Yes.
it seems like that's baffling to people that nobody wakes up trying to sabotage everything. But this leads to one of the questions I wanted to ask you. You've, in your career, you spent some time with the Federal Public Service here in Canada, which is, a very conservative, culturally. And then, you followed that up by working at Microsoft as a senior cloud advocate, being out in the community, very, polar opposites. On the cultural. What's a positive of that sort of conservative, very, almost glacial pace of change in the public service? Then what's a positive of the more Azure side, of there? Can you give us a pro for each?
So working in the government means they're very risk adverse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good because that means that sometimes as a security person, when you advise, like, that is a risk that I believe is too big to take, they actually listen and then don't do the thing. They're like, you know what? Maybe she's right. That does sound scary.
Mm-hmm.
They also, I'm not sure if you know about some of the policies, but there's one called ATIP, so Access to Information and Privacy. So everything that's in your emails can be read by a person, in a public citizen who requests it, unless there's a security reason not to. So they're very conscious as to what they say and what they write. And it's good because if I put something in writing that is serious, like this is a risk sign-off sheet and I need you to sign it, even if they don't sign it, the fact that I've put all of that in writing is this beautiful paper trail for the public if something really bad happens, right? And that is how the government works, like transparency,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they care about different things than business cares about.
Yeah.
So good things about joining Microsoft was they're at the bleeding edge of all the cool security tech. Like,
Yeah.
wow. And you could tell them a thing and then 4 seconds later it's done. I'm like, I think these things. And then like 2 days later, they're like, go into Azure and look. And I'm like, whoa, that's incredible. So they would change things very quickly and is exciting. And they were not afraid to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
They still like, because they're a blue chip company for a reason.
Yeah.
They're not reckless. They're not like a startup where maybe they would be like, halfway jumping off cliffs. They're not like that.
Yeah. But it's move fast, fail forward, and take reasonable risks, as opposed to the government, which is, we got to make sure this is going to work. There's no room for error on anything.
Yes. And I also found that the security people at Microsoft, like, they're very passionate, and just their level and depth of knowledge just constantly floored me. Just like constantly, like,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of smart people in the Canadian government. I worked with lots of intelligent people, but Microsoft, like, I just kept saying, it's like, it's the cream of the crop. And sometimes I would just pinch myself, like, how did they let you in? Don't they know you're riffraff? Like,
come on.
And I don't really have like imposter syndrome. I'm not that person, but I'm just like, damn. It's just, it's cool. Like in my interview, Jesse Frizzell interviewed me, and I was just like, I follow you on Twitter. This interview was worth it just so I got to hang out with you for an hour one-on-one.
Yep. That is a very cool experience. But also, the reason why you were hired on and there, because you deserve to be there. You're also someone who, if they get one-on-one time, would be like, I follow you on Twitter. I subscribe to your website. Like, you are coaching me on a bunch of stuff. This is awesome. So, tables have turned in a short time. So
it's true. It's true.
One of the things I like to do on the show is put people on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
Which, but in a politely Canadian way, so it's not bad. We do this little rapid fire segment. I'm going to ask you a couple things. I'm going to give you 2 choices, and you got to pick one, but you can't explain why. You just have to pick it. and then we'll circle
Okay.
back a little bit. So
Okay.
a little bit challenging, but a little bit fun too. So in rapid fire here, so everyone's obsession with hackers, so movies, TVs, the popular media, stuff like that. Is that good for cybersecurity or bad?
Bad.
Okay, we'll come back. If you could only have one of these, do you get vulnerability scanning in your pipeline or regular pen tests?
VA scanning.
Okay. Which one is perceived as cooler? Perceived as cooler. Red or blue teams?
Red.
Interesting. Okay. What would make a better security pro? And I think we've already covered this. Communication skills or technical?
A technical.
Okay. Okay. Now, if you had your choice, you could magically wave your wand and wipe one issue off the internet entirely. Injection attacks or broken authentication?
Broken off.
Ooh, interesting. You went a couple different ways than I thought you would in there. Okay,
Because there's just so much more broken off all over. There's just way more of it.
okay, and I see where you're coming. I mean, they're both massive issues, but I think broken without strong auth. There's so many other things that we can't do, right? Like we can't get into zero trust if we don't have strong auth. But interesting. So why red team over blue for cool?
You said perceived as cooler. You didn't
Yeah.
say what one do you think is
No,
cooler.
no, but why? So you perceived as cooler.
Because
Now, do
movies,
you?
movies are all about the hackers breaking the things and they're
Mhm.
running around and like no one's like, oh, except for that really dumb movie where they needed to patch an airplane. Did you see that? And like they're like driving and he jumps and he puts the USB key and it's like,
Yeah.
no, you would just stop the plane. Why would you and obviously you need to reboot the plane. Come on.
So let me ask you a follow-up question then. Given that you were a dedicated pen tester for quite a long time, have you often carried a machine gun and jumped on several international planes like Chris Hemsworth in Black Hat?
I haven't even done that once. What I would carry would be a toque and then those smoker mitts. So like your fingers stick out, but then there's like a thing that you can cover
Yeah.
and then an extra pair of pants. Because in the summer I would wear a dress. Have you ever been to a data center? The coldness comes up from the bottom. And
Yeah.
if you are wearing a dress, I'm just like, oh, my legs are just totally numb. I guess I'm just like, yeah. So I had like this emergency data center outfit in case
Nice.
like we're not planning to go to the data center today, but like time to go to the data center. I'm like,
Fair. And I mean, we all have weird things in our go bags. That happens. But
yep.
yeah, I mean, and I agree. I know this is the challenge, especially around the media and how they portray cybersecurity and hackers. And I think I heard it as a comment in one of your talks, but I know I deal with it a lot myself, is explaining to friends and family what you do, because the automatic assumption is you're that cool person who jumps around. And I mean, I think we're cool, but we're not jumping a plane with a machine gun and then parachute out of that plane into a foreign city, like kind of cool.
like we almost never do that, like less than once a month.
Yeah, I've only done it like 3 times this week in a pandemic. It's fine. It's all good. But it is a challenge of, the difficulty I always had was with CSI. My partner, she's a genetics researcher, and by training, I'm a forensics investigator. So, we could be on CSI. And the challenge we always had was that the DNA in CSI in the test tube, you could see it. And then when they're doing the cyber side, they take like a 2 terabyte hard drive, they put it in a machine, and they have answers immediately. And you're like, where's the 3 days of watching it like index and copy and like then coming back and like the 8 pounds of coffee you've had in those 3 days? Like, no, it's instant. And I mean, I get it for TV, but
Also, did you see that one where there's like someone's like they're like hacking, they're like hack back and they're on the keyboard and then the other one puts their hands also on the same keyboard. It's just like
it was a duet. It was beautiful.
just all these 4 hands giant mess. It's like don't the actors think like this doesn't make sense?
It's
like
what
no one was like
It's what looks good on TV, right? It's the same with the
Yeah.
short-lived, thankfully, CSI Cyber, when anytime they had red code was malware, they had green code, and then red code was bad code.
oh look at his green code.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get you. I hear it. So one of the back to some reasonable questions. One of the things that you've been a huge proponent of and a massive help in the community is around mentoring and helping getting people in. So you run Cyber Mentoring Monday. That's the new hashtag, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's your top piece of advice for somebody looking to get into cybersecurity besides training to jump off of planes with guns?
So the way I got into cybersecurity was that I got a professional mentor. And by I got one, I mean, he dragged me kicking and screaming into InfoSec. He spent a year and a half convincing me to become a pen tester. Then I got another two professional mentors, I guess three, and all of them encouraged me and enabled me and taught me. And if I would get really stuck with something, they would always help.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that having a professional mentor is the most important step because you can't, right now, you can't just go to university and then become a pen tester or an application security person. There's courses on Udemy. There's, SANS if you just have hundreds of thousands of dollars you don't need. Like they have amazing courses. If I had all the money in the world, I would go.
Mm-hmm.
But the Canadian dollar and the American dollar just, oh my.
Yeah.
But there's no like clear career path to get there. But with a professional mentor, you have a person that is in your corner who you can trust, even if they just have coffee with you once a month and you just say like, so, I've read this book and completed this course and I really want to get some hands-on work. Like, is there a place I could volunteer or like an open source project I could join? Or like, do you think I could get an internship somewhere? Like, what are my options? And just having a person that's more senior that can help not tell you what to do, but just give you some guide rails, some gentle nudges, or really hard nudges, depending upon your mentor. Like one of my mentors was like, you're going to speak at B-sides. And I was like, what? I don't do talks. He's like, you do. I'm giving you 10 months to get ready. And I was like, no. And he's like, I just tweeted it. Too late. I'm like, what? What? He's like, get Twitter.
Yeah.
Because for the first long time, I didn't bother with any of that. Yeah, and then all these awesome people from OWASP all agreed to help me with my talk. So my first talk was how to hack your own apps.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like how to use a VA scanner and what the results meant and how to like go in and fix things and like what does this mean and why is this scary and how to do it safely. And it's just how to run a VA scanner as a dev.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was what I was learning. So they're like, do you understand how many other people want to learn that? And I ended up turning into a workshop and giving it at every single meetup that would possibly take me in Ottawa. Like, it did not matter what their meetup was about. I'm like, hi, I have this workshop, blah, blah, blah. Can I? And they'd just be like, you're so adorable. You're clearly really excited. Like, yeah, let's do it. And like every meetup said yes.
Well, because you're passionate about the subject, right? And the thing that I always try to remind people is that there's always someone further behind on the path, right? And if you've struggled through figuring out how to work that into your workflow, especially as when you were just starting out as a developer, that's, as much as you're like, oh, I barely made it work. That's an insane amount of value that you can share with somebody in 30 minutes or 60 minutes or a 2-hour workshop that they don't have to struggle for weeks, banging their head against the wall. They can learn it from you and then they can teach somebody else.
Exactly. And it was just so fun to like, I went to the university and like the student association made like reserve this giant room. And then all of us were just hacking on stuff for hours. I'm like, go smash all the things. Yeah. And I gave them like this VM that had all these different apps. I'm like, go get this one, go get that one. Let's do this. And everyone was running around giving high fives. I was just like, this is the best.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic thing to take something that complicated, make it approachable, and to show people the enjoyment in it, right? When I'm talking to people who are trying to get in the field, my biggest sales pitch is always, you will never be bored because there are some of the most amazing problems because cybersecurity touches everything in tech. So if you want to work on smart cars, you can go do that. You want to work on factories? Cool. You want to work on web apps that serve millions of people? Yeah, there's a need for all of this. And if you like puzzles, this is a great field.
Yeah. All of my talks are just lessons that are camouflaged as talks. They're just things where I wish I had known that. Like the pushing left like a boss talk is like, I wish someone had told me this at the beginning of my AppSec career. Like, what's the difference between a security assessment, running a scan and a pen test? And like, when should I do which one? Like when I was a pen tester, I almost never did pen testing. I
Yeah.
basically did security assessments all the time and called them pen tests because that's what almost all clients want. And like,
Hmm.
when should you write an exploit? And when are you like wasting your client's money? It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, that's so helpful. You don't actually need to write an exploit for everything because almost no one cares but you.
And
Yeah, as it
that's, I
turns
mean,
out.
we see that all the time, right? Where people are always worried about the latest 0 day, and it's not that's not the biggest issue. It's the fact that you don't have basic security practices in place. You don't have regular patching. Like it's as cool as it is. And I think that was one of the challenges I always see at security conferences is they're 99% cool niche things and 1% like, hey, listen, here's how you actually get stuff done when you're working. It doesn't sound cool, but here's how you automate a bunch of your pain away. And that's a continuing theme in a bunch of your talks as well, right?
Oh yeah, automating stuff is so fun. But like I learned how to code so I would never have to do something twice.
Perfect.
And I love automating stuff, especially stuff where it's like really scary, like for instance, scanning for keys in your
Mm.
code. Like that was a lesson I learned at Microsoft. A really good lesson in my first few weeks. So the security team, the incident response team didn't like me so much at first because I triggered a real incident by accident, being a bit of a jackass.
Hmm.
So I was like, I'm going to make a lesson for DevSlop, and I'm going to put, a fake username and a fake password in a connection string and check it in. And then we're going to find it as an emergency and then fix it. Well, so I checked it in to my GitHub, and it's like a public facing repo. And I used Azure to do it, and Azure saw, and Azure told on me. Azure was like, nope, this looks like a key. I'm like, no, it's okay. And they're like, we don't think it's okay. I'm like, no, it's okay. Go around that. And then it's like, did you ask your mom? I'm like, yeah, she said it was yes. Yes, go. So I go past all of the things, and then it phoned my boss. Yeah. And my boss calls me. He's like, Jenka, what is happening right now? And I'm like telling him, and he's like, oh, that's hilarious. That's so funny. And then, like, in a total of 11 minutes, the incident response team contacted me, and they're like, Tanya, you put a connection string with, and I was like, oh, no, it's for this. And they're like, so what you're saying is you triggered a real incident within Microsoft for fun. No, shit. And then you could tell they're just like,
But hey, you
children.
you tested their process and it worked
It
flawlessly,
works.
which is good and a good example of automation. Catching, like prompting. Are you sure? And that was a nice, like, whether intentional or not. That's a great example of a gentle prod. Like, hey, this might be a problem. Are you sure you want to do it? Here's the consequence. Oh no, are you really sure? Have you checked? And like, that's a great example of gently kind of walking the user through.
Yes.
Please don't take a gun and shoot yourself in the foot.
Yes.
But not like, hey, don't do that, but just very nicely explaining and educating. So with that, I got one last question for you here. This has
Okay.
been fantastic. You've shared so much great knowledge. For the people in the audience, check the show notes, but remember tomorrow, all the talks online. Tanya's on at 8:45 Eastern or 5:45 Pacific with Purple is the New Black, modern
And
approaches
when's
for
your
application.
talk, Merc?
1:15 Eastern. Thank you. Risk decisions in an imperfect world. I'll tweet that out later. But the important thing is in the show notes. Also, you can go to shehackspurple.dev. Sign up for the subscription. Not that Tanya needs to know this, but it's ridiculously underpriced. It is an insane amount of value for $70. Great set of tools, education, links to all Tanya's stuff as well. She blogs regularly on Dev2, still on Medium, I think, as well, right? Her
Yeah.
Twitter, all that kind of stuff's there. Definitely follow her. Obviously, you can tell from this conversation just a sliver into the insights of how amazing and deep her knowledge goes in the field. But with that, I want to give you one last question here. So you're a respected coach and mentor in the field. If you could get one thing across to everybody about cybersecurity, so they could just get it into their head, like it just sinks into their heart and it's just now known, what would that thing be?
For software developers or for every person ever?
Either or, your call.
Okay. For software developers, it would be input validation. I'm writing a book and I cover it 3 times, 3 different ways. And then I have
Mm-hmm.
stories and then I have more articles and then I have more things, because if we did input validation on everything, so if it's from your database, if it's from an API, even if you wrote that API, if it's in your URL parameters, if it's from the user, if it's from anywhere, you validate that input, even if your mom sent it to you. I remember years ago, I got an email from my mom and there was a virus attached. Actually, no, there wasn't a virus attached, but she had attached a Word document that was just named Word.doc or whatever. And I called her and I was like, there's no subject, there's no text, there's like, are you sending viruses? She's like, oh no, I just wanted you to like read this Word document for me. I mean, and it's named Word.doc.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I just wanted you to review this, what I can't remember why. But don't even trust your mom, because someone could have, like, her computer could have got malware, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if we could validate everything, not sanitize, but validate, if it's not what you're expecting, reject it.
Yep.
The end.
Love it.
Everyone,
Absolutely
like,
love it.
95% more secure. Boom.
Easy.
Done.
Like, easy to say, getting easier with frameworks. But yeah, I mean, that's why injection's been #1 in the top 10 for the longest time,
Yeah.
right? Because people just take validation, and we see it even still to this day in tutorials online for different things. Like, hey, set this up, and they just take random input from the internet, and you're like,
I know. Hello world. The first thing we do is we show them how to put stuff on the screen. And then the next thing we do is teach them how to get SQL injection into their app.
Yep.
We're like, then accept the input. Don't validate it. I'm sure it's fine. Now let's reflect it. Great. Cross-site scripting. Awesome.
yeah, somebody has to teach
just-
the hackers of tomorrow.
Hello world. If we could adjust hello world, oh my gosh.
Maybe that's a new project, the new Hello World, like Hello New World, and then rewrite it with
I love
all
it.
the input validated, right? We could pound
Hello
that out.
secure world.
There you go. Perfect.
And we
Love it.
add that to the lesson. Oh, Mark,
Love it.
this has been
Absolutely
such a good
love it.
conversation.
With that, I thank you very, very much. Again, everybody listening, hit up the show notes, see all Tanya's fantastic material, follow her on social, subscribe to her stuff off of her main site, and check out all the talks online, all the donations. It's all donation-based, and all the companies, including Trend, sponsoring it. All the money is just donating to the WHO, which is much needed in this time. With that, my thanks again, Tanya. We very much appreciate you taking the time.
May I pump the 3 other conferences I'm speaking at in April?
Absolutely.
Really briefly?
Fire away, and we will add these to the notes as well if they're not already there.
Friday, I'm speaking at All Day DevOps, more security, but DevOps. I'm also speaking at Hella Secure, which is why be secure when you could be hella secure? A conference all about AppSec, all free, with no ads, no sponsors. And then I'm also speaking at Isolation Con, which is put on by the Many Hats Club from London, but it's for everyone. And that is, I believe, a 24-hour conference as well. So no matter where you are on the planet, you can watch them.
Great.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been
Yeah.
so wonderful.
Thank you, and we'll add the links to those 3 as well in the show notes, and those will be up shortly. Thanks again.
Awesome. Bye, Mark.
Bye.